On the 26th of April 2018, 2 European cyclists were killed in Chiapas, southern Mexico. German Holger Hagenbusch and Polish Krzysztof Chmielewski died while cycling between Ocosingo and San Cristobal de las Casas. Initially, the local government covered up the incident by saying that the cyclists may have been run off the road, but the families were not content with this explanation. After further investigation, it became clear that they had been attacked, robbed and killed. So this leads to the question, is it safe to cycle in Mexico? The simple answer to that is no. This is obvious to any Mexican. I like to travel and explore Mexico, and before I go on any adventure, I undertake a risk assessment to calculate the risks. The issue in Mexico is complicated by multiple factors. I will start with the issue of cycling, and then I will extend the information to a wider perspective. First, I would never cycle in Mexico for 2 reasons. The risk of being assaulted. If you are riding on a long, lonely road, especially interstate, you are very vulnerable. A driver has time to pass you, see your weakness, spend time further along pondering and planning on how to rob you, and then they can set a trap. I'm not saying that all Mexicans are devious assassins who lie in wait for vulnerable foreigners, but it only takes one person or a group of people in a car to contemplate the idea and set a plan into action. If I was thinking of traveling in an area, I would be inclined to ask locals if they know of any dangers in that area. Sometimes they tell you paranoid stories, other times they will provide you accurate, useful information. It is better to be on the safe side. If you are cycling in the city, the risk of such an assault is much less. In Pachuca, there is a cycling club filled with normal Mexicans, not athletes, who just like the opportunity to cycle around. There is a tendency to stay on cycle paths and a general inclination to avoid the roads. Mexicans realize that it is far safer to cycle in groups. You cannot just wander randomly around Mexico, especially on the roads. For example, the cartel, the Knights Templar, had about 5,000 employees at its peak. If you are in a drug-related area like Michoacán or Guerrero, you shouldn't really wander randomly around the roads or countryside. There are drug traffickers involved in the making of methamphetamine near rivers that you don't want to accidentally bump into. But as a general rule, if you walk in the countryside away from roads, there is a significant reduction in risk. Bandits don't want to spend their time sitting in a barren land, in the middle of a forest or on the top of a mountain to steal something from you. But they do drive around in cars and are opportunistic by nature. The second reason that you shouldn't cycle, especially on roads, is that they are generally unsafe. Mexico is a cabron culture. That means that car drivers believe that they are superior to cyclists and so are less careful around them. I suggest that it is unwise generally to cycle on roads.
No tengo miedo, 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 no tengo miedo.
Roads can contain some seriously bad holes with a risk that you end up diving over your handrails. Also, speed bumps can be hidden in the dark, not marked, and you can hit one badly. This also goes for motorbikes. I had a 19-year-old friend who had great business acumen. To celebrate him earning money in his business, he bought himself a motorbike. My friend is highly intelligent and an able young man, but I was concerned about this decision. Now, the first thing you should know is that mothers dominate the society. Although he's 19 years old, his mum's the boss. I said to her, I don't think that your son having a motorbike is a good idea. The roads are unsafe. She said, well, you know, he's young, he wants adventure, it'll be good for him. I pushed the issue further than was appropriate in the culture. I said to her, Señora, you say that now, But if he becomes permanently paralyzed or killed, that will affect you for the rest of your life." Conversation ended. A few months later, I discovered that he had been involved in an accident on the road. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured, but the accident traumatized him as he came to the realization of the danger of the roads. The next day, he put up his bike for sale. If you plan on getting lost randomly in Mexico, you have to undertake a serious, in-depth risk assessment. You need to check to see if there are cartels working in the area. You need to see if there are any conflicts between indigenous people and the government. The two cyclists were biking from Ocosingo to San Cristobal de las Casas in Chiapas. I would like to show you what the cyclists could have known if they had spent a bit of time investigating the area on YouTube.
Órale, saca el buen toma, ahí ni querés, saca el buen, órale, órale, saca ahí. Órale, aquí todos tenemos derecho, órale, autoridades son autoridades, órale. Aquí nadie saca plomos. Órale, agarren uno. Órale, llévenlo. Llévenlo. Para que aprendan.
There is a video marked 7th of March 2016 showing the Mexican military firing into the air to threaten the Tzeltales indigenous people. So those people were angry against the government. Sometimes it can be unclear what will be the consequences of such a conflict, but it is wise to stay away from the area. Indeed, round about the time of this conflict, on the 6th of July 2016, and 2 years before the cyclists passed through, a news article was uploaded to YouTube.
El Grupo Consultivo Fomento Económico de Chiapas reveló que el 100% de los robos y asaltos cometidos en las carreteras del estado fueron con violencia, situación que debería atender a la brevedad la autoridad de seguridad correspondiente, misma que informó que en los últimos 3 años el número de robos y asaltos cometidos en las vías de comunicación intermunicipal ha ido en incremento. Mostraron que de 2010 al 2015 el número de asaltos y robos en carreteras aumentó un 44%.
Hola amigos, saluda a su amigo Enduro Maníaco.
A Mexican uploaded a video on the 8th of January 2017 of him and his friends being robbed. They passed through one area called Rancho Alegre, where the locals accused them of driving too fast, even though they had attempted to respect the people by driving slowly. They were fined 500 pesos per person. The locals had been talking about imprisoning them and taking away their bikes. Finally, there is a video from February the 18th, 2017, 14 months before the cyclists entered Chiapas, showing indigenous people stopping tourists on the streets and charging them to pass. So we can build up a picture that there is tension in the area between the indigenous people and the local government. The locals want to scare tourists away to punish the government. They also resort to robbery to survive. Incidentally, the Mexicans who were stopped and fined understood that they had to pay this money. People from Europe or America might have been tempted to ask difficult questions like, "What right do you have?" or refuse to pay. and that could result in calamity. I would like to remind the viewer that I have lived in Mexico for 12 years. I'm not trying to deter people from visiting the country. I'm simply trying to provide factors that people should think about when visiting.